Hi, everyone. We're going to get started. I'm Farzana Doctor, the author of Seven, and it's my pleasure to host this event to celebrate Seven's audiobook. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from my home in Toronto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'm grateful to live and work on this land and to work toward greater social justice on Turtle Island as well as globally. Thank you to everyone for attending, and special thanks to the Penguin Random House team for creating the audiobook and supporting this event. I'd also like to shout out the Dundurn team that produced the paper and ebooks. And it's really important to also shout out the audiobooks director, Ajeeth Parkal. Thank you so much, Ajeeth. I'd like to introduce you now to the two magnificent actors who narrate Seven. I've been listening to Seven's audiobook today, and I've been so touched with their amazing performances. I just love how they've brought my book to life. Ellora Patnaik narrates Sharifa. Ellora is an actress of screen and stage, as well as a professional dancer, dance teacher, and choreographer. She is a graduate of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and was a member of the company in her final year. Notable film and television appearances include My Own Country, How to Be Indie, Murdoch Mysteries, Orphan Black, Kim's Convenience, Schitt's Creek, and Hudson and Rex. Ellora has been very active in the Toronto theatre community, performing in Her Too with Nightwood, Much Ado About Nothing at Tarragon, Rukmini's Gold with the Toronto Fringe, A Christmas Carol with Soul Pepper, and Romeo and Juliet with Shakespeare in the Rough. Welcome, Ellora. Raoul Bhaneja narrates Abdullahi. A graduate of the National Theatre School of Canada, Raoul is a Gemini, Dora, and Canadian Comedy Award nominee, as well as a Maple Blues Award winner with his longtime musical act, Raoul and the Big Time. He's an acclaimed stage actor who has performed across Canada, in the UK, and off-Broadway. Over the last 20 years, he has appeared in over 120 film and television projects, ranging from domestic series to Hollywood blockbusters. In the last year and a half, he has expanded into audiobooks, and he's thrilled to have worked on Seven, his sixth book to date. Other titles include the upcoming editions of Afterlife Crisis and Coconut Dreams. Welcome to you both. I'm so thrilled that you can be here. And just before you come on, I'm going to just do a little synopsis for the audience so they have a sense of what they're going to be listening to in a minute when you do your readings. So here's Seven's synopsis. When Sharifa accompanies her husband on a marriage-saving trip to India in 2016, she thinks she's going to research her great-great-grandfather, a wealthy business leader and philanthropist. What captures her imagination is not his rags to riches story, but the mystery of his 4 wives missing from the family lore. She ends up excavating much more than she had imagined. Sharifa's trip coincides with a time of unrest within her insular and conservative religious community, and there is no escaping its politics. A group of feminists is speaking out against Khatna, an age-old ritual they insist is female genital cutting. Sharifa's 2 favorite cousins are on opposite sides of the debate, and she seeks a middle ground. As the issue heats up, Sharifa discovers an unexpected truth and is forced to take a position. So Ellora is going to be reading an excerpt from Sharifa just before they go to India. And after that, Raoul is going to be reading an excerpt from Abdullahi when he was a child. So I'll turn it over to Ellora now.
Hi, Farzana. In the evening, Murtaza and I meet on the couch for the married person's evening ritual, TV. Along with a nightly bowl of microwave popcorn, We've been putting away 2 episodes of the Mindy Project after Z is in bed. We guffaw and cringe in the same places. We are diasporic South Asian children of immigrants, communing over the embarrassing life of a diasporic South Asian child of immigrants. While the credits roll, Murtaza leans over, kisses my neck, and says, "Shall we turn it off now or watch another episode?" "Sure, Murthy, we can turn it off," I say, sensing his preference. After all, it is Saturday and 9 p.m. I'd prefer to hit play, to be distracted by someone else's awkward world, but I appreciate my husband's good-natured and consistent initiative-taking. My friends and I talk about our lackluster sex lives and waning libidos, and I feel like I'm the lucky one amongst us. At least we can say we are still doing it, rather than being in couples therapy because we aren't, or breaking up because we aren't, or having extramarital affairs because we aren't. I'd never cheated in my life, neither on a test nor a timesheet. When my naturopath directed me to eliminate sugar, dairy, wheat, and caffeine last year to improve my immune system's functioning, I followed her instructions to the letter for 60 days. How to make sense of the affair then? It was just over 4 years ago, when Z was 3. Ian, a guy I once slept with, friend requested me on Facebook. I recall experiencing a twinge of something, a flutter in my belly I could have interpreted as a prescient warning. I brushed away the sensation and thought, nah, it's just Facebook, and it's been ages since we last saw each other. Plus, I'd heard from a friend in common that he'd moved to England. I thought we'd share a few likes, perhaps a little lurking. No problem. At the time, I couldn't admit to myself that it was cheating. There were no secret liaisons in 2.5-star motels we paid for in cash, no late-night phone calls, no sexy photos. Leave it to me to have an affair without ever really having an affair.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Chapter 4, January 1866, South Bombay. 11-year-old Abdul huddled under the yellow glow of a street lamp, his index finger pacing his labored reading. "The lion lives in the jungle," he whispered. "His roar is loud." An elderly fruit seller trudged by with an empty wooden cart pulled by a weary bullock. Just in time, Abdul Ali wrapped his legs around the post to avoid a heavy hoof landing on his toe. A fly, one of the bullock's many winged passengers, hopped onto his hand and then onto the Hindi primary reader he had borrowed from Sunil, the 9-year-old boy of the family for whom he worked. He told his mother it was a gift. Did she believe the lie? Thinking of her, it seemed, could summon her. He looked up and saw her face framed in the window of the 3rd-floor room they shared with another widow and her 3 young children. She fanned herself with her orna. Despite the evening's cool, the day's heat lingered in the room. He waved to her and pleaded, "5 more minutes, Mommy." She nodded, her lips a straight line. But he knew she was proud of him, knew they had left the village for a better life, and for now, their better life was just this one nicked book about a lion in a jungle that he struggled, word by word, to understand.
Thank you so much. Ellora, come and join us. I'm going to ask you both a bunch of really hard questions now. So maybe I'll just start with something like very concrete. Can you talk a little bit, because people probably don't know, what are some of the nitty-gritty things about creating an audiobook? How long does it take? What's the process like? What do you do? All of that.
How long's the book? This one's long. I don't know, Raoul, you have more experience with the audiobooks. This is my second experience, and so extensive. But I read it. I read it, and but I didn't read the ending. I didn't want to read the ending. I read it later, actually, the night before we did the My Last Day. I read the ending, so I was just like, you know, I had a feeling, and then it wasn't quite clear, and then David Stinson, our recordist, confirmed it with me, so I was just like, oh my God. So it's wonderful. No spoilers here, but
you just alluded to a whole lot of things that's confusing people, but that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
No, let them be confused. Let them be confused. It raises interest. Preparation for me is for this type of scenario would be to read it and just go line per line, because I had to be all the different characters and do the different accents, except for, of course, what Raoul did in India and here. And so there was a lot of thinking line per line as I went along, and it was more about the conversation, and then it naturally flowed, because it's very good storytelling. I mean, you've done such a great job. I didn't feel that I needed to prepare much, because it served me as an actor. So I just went in there and gave her good, but it was, if anything, I just needed to preserve my voice more than anything. They weren't super long sessions, but towards the end I could feel it. So it kept physically, I think you have to stay very strong for this.
How many days was it for you in the studio?
For me, it was we were in there about 4 days, 3 days. I'd say it was about just over 2 weeks, coming in and also doing pickups and stuff. So, which I loved doing. I mean, especially during this time, and you know, we hadn't worked for so long, and this was kind of like my first big job of the summer since after lockdown and everything. And it was wonderful to go in every day and look forward to, you know, being with Ajeeth Parkal, our director, and David Stinson at Tattoo, which is a wonderful studio, and it was fun. We had a good team, I felt. And I think that's the recipe to every project, you know, and they were very supportive, especially it was a very emotional, obviously it gets very emotional, and it's very charged. There are funny moments, and there's very, you know, moments of compassion and vulnerability. And as being the only woman in the room, kind of, you know, and with this subject, and it was really great to have them, you know, have my back. They were so supportive and so compassionate, and just, if ever I needed, they kept asking. They know Ajeeth was really about, do you need a break? Are you okay? You know, because it is such an emotional journey. So, but you know, you'd have to, with voice, you don't realize how much it reads when you hear it, because, you know, everything is taken away except for voice. And so sometimes, you know, when you get tired, you know, towards the end of the day, oh, okay, we're going to probably have to do this tomorrow, pick it up. But we went pretty smoothly, I thought.
Good. And Raoul?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few more, but still, I've only really started doing them in the last year and a half. I did the unabridged audiobook for Funny Boy, which was my first book to do. So it's been interesting, because I've been doing quite a bit of work, diasporic work, I suppose. So that's also been very interesting for me, because you do, even though the voices are so different and the work is so different, at the same time, you know, it's really cool to dive into Canadian literature that's coming from a South Asian experienced diasporic point of view, because you can start to see what are the themes, what are the things that connect so many of these experiences, what even inform our things that people are interested as writers. And that's something, if I wasn't, you know, I'm not a literature student, you know, so in a way that's been a real gift for me, because it's helped me frame my own experience, because I kind of go, oh yeah, like so many of the stories have either have stuff that happens in both Canada and in India. Your book's so fascinating because we have Canada and India today and India in the past. So it's just so interesting, because whether it be through a flashback or through, in my case, like chapters that exist as separate of the other story, but of course totally interconnected, it's really interesting to see how so many of us are struggling with what is our connection to where we're all from,
Yes.
but we're here. And so that's actually been, I think, one of the great gifts of this for me, besides of course loving to have a job. We need, and for actors it's been a very difficult time, of course. If you do theater, they're shut. If you do TV and film, that's basically been shut until the last month. And if you're actors like Ellora or there's always limits in terms of the kind of work that we're allowed to go out for, that we're available for. I've been lucky, I've worked a lot, but at the same time there's a whole bunch of restrictions. So when we have this opportunity to dive into these audiobooks, and in particular your book, it's a real gift for us, because particularly if you come from the theater like we do, like our whole modus operandi has been to be storytellers. So when theater actors, not that other people couldn't do this at all, but I think for theater actors, it's a great synergy between reading these long form stories out loud. Yeah, like just to give people an idea, it might, for the 1 hour of audiobook you hear, it may have taken anything from 2 to 3 hours of recording for that 1 hour. Because sometimes people go like, oh yeah, that was a 9-hour audiobook. Did you do that in a day? It's like, well, first of all, you can't read for 9 hours straight, because just like Ellora said, your voice drops, you get fatigued, you get tired, your concentration goes. But also, you stop, you start, you redo sections. If you're working with a great director like Ajeeth that we were working with, and also pronunciations. We're from the diaspora, but the subcontinent is so full of different languages and cultures and religions. Like none of us are experts on all of it. So we need to have. I mean, one thing I was saying is that Ajeeth was great to work with. It's the first audiobook I had done from the diaspora with a South Asian director of someone with South Asian background. And that helped me a lot, because I had another person I could check in with. I wasn't having to be the expert as well.
Yes.
And and there was someone else I could share it with, who was like, hey, is this and I mean, Ajeeth immigrated to Canada from India as an adult. So he has even a more current reference point of what India is. Sometimes when I'm working on something, my reference is my dad. Well, my dad's 80, so my dad's India is my India. And that's partition New Delhi from 1947, 1946. So, it was a real treat to work with him. And he'd come from television and had worked in post-production as well. So he had this great fit of being someone who has like amazing ears, but also knew how to talk to actors. And for someone like me, could be a help and go, don't like how you pronounce that word, let's try it again. And that's what we need, because it's a lot for us to perform these works, which are great, and do them well. But I think, I'm sure Laura's the same, like we're so sensitive to mispronunciations, inaccuracies that we might deliver in any language, any book we're doing. So yeah, I think that the main thing people don't understand is that it does take a lot longer than what you hear.
Yes.
And
just jumping back around Ajeeth, I was also really relieved when I heard that he was going to be the director, because someone who actually lived in Mumbai. I mean, he's more Indian than the three of us probably put together. I don't know, Ellora, what your history is.
Sometimes
it just
we had our friendly banter.
Okay. So I was just really happy. But I wanted to ask you, what is the difference in the process from doing theater or film work compared to this? Like I had a small cameo role, and it was so interesting to have David Stinson in one ear and Ajeeth Parkal in another ear. And it was so interesting where I was asked to pause and redo a line. And like that was all brand new to me, right? Because I'm not an actor. So tell me a little bit about how those different worlds are different.
Well, I think every platform will feel different. Theater is, there's a whole life that you live when you do a theatrical piece, because it's a longer, there's a longer rehearsal process, and then you're basically living in the theater by the time opening night happens, and you just have your own family of this group, this project, and then when it closes, it's like, a section of your life is over. With film and TV, it's much quicker. Raoul knows this. We both almost basically have the same career background, very similar. And so that's like, you go to set and you do it. You might have a rehearsal. It all depends on the size of the role, or if it's a guest role. If it's there's more of a quantity and content, then you might have separate rehearsals. But a lot of the times, with me in my career being, a lot of times I've been pretty much a day player, especially in the beginning of my career, coming back to Toronto from school. You just go on set and you do it. For this, I always say when I'm doing any audio work, I'm just like, I love this. And I open my arms, because there's such a sense of freedom. You can be at work and do the job in your pajamas. It's like, you don't have to worry about anything. There's no audience, there's no costume, there's no distraction except for what is in front of you. So you can just dive in and just, wrap your everything around those wonderful words and tell the story and be the story, be that voice. And so I find that's the big difference for me. I find it very liberating doing audio work.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it is like a one-person show, really. Like, you're in charge of everything. I mean, I was just going to say, like, I don't know, Laura, how you do it, but when I started doing it, they said to me, "Oh, you've got to get," let me see if I can get the angle better here. You've got to get I annotate. So I got I annotate because I could highlight my lines in different,
Colors.
different
Can
colors.
sort of see.
I did mine on my Chromebook that my brother gave me.
There you go. So
and
for me,
I got to highlight too. I love colors.
It's like, and you do that so you know which character speaks when, because it's too late if you're looking in a line and then it says, said he or said she. So, I find the process is kind of like how you prepare if you're an actor for maybe the first day of rehearsal. You read the whole script before, or what sections you choose to read. I love that you left the ending, Ellora, to the ending. That's great. And that you kind of mark it up. You make notes if you need to. And we are sometimes asked in different books, if there's anything we don't understand in advance, if there's words we don't understand, pronunciations, but also other things you just don't get. We have an opportunity to kind of discuss those in the beginning. But it's amazing, like, you're pretty much, like, after you settle in, get a mic check, have a glass of water, you start acting. So there is something empowering and liberating about that, because you're just left to start telling the story. I mean, I sometimes have a little bit of, like, it can get quite daunting. Like, when you're on day one of a 440-page book that's going to take 45, 50 hours to record, you do have times when you just kind of, you can get daunted by it, because you have I'm sure Laura feels the same. And I think all the audiobook actors who do this, where we're not doing technical manuals, where we're trying to communicate these stories, and it's art for us, it's performance. Like, we also, I think, feel a great pressure to execute it at a level that will be as rewarding for anybody reading it, or if they saw the film of it. We want them to be as moved by it as we've been by reading it. And I found too that, if something's not written well, it's usually pretty hard to read. And fortunately, with Penguin Random House or ECW, some of the other companies we work with, a lot of the books are really fine books. And so that also makes it a pleasure to read. I think if the books are not as well written, or there's really complicated sections that are, if we can read, not every book, but with a lot of books, if we can read them aloud, they're often quite comfortable for people to read.
Yeah.
Your book's like totally speakable and readable. But I know actors, of course, have had to deal with books that are, incredibly dense, super poetic. This other book I worked on, Randall Graham's book, Afterlife Crisis, which the audiobook came out the same day as yours. Like that, the narrator of that entire 440-page book is sort of in the style of Bertie Wooster from P.G. Wodehouse. So like I basically had to do the entire book in the accent of like Bertie Wooster from, like Jeeves and Wooster. So that was like a 1930s English fop.
Did you go home like talking that way to your kids?
I just like my head exploded. And then and like Ellora said, and she had more characters to play in your book than I did. Then you also have like, okay, I've got the narrator's voice, and now I have to, without turning it into a puppet show, we can't like we can't turn it into a cartoon.
Yeah.
We have to subtly grade it so the reader can hear, okay, that's a female voice, that's a male voice, that's the dad, that's the daughter, that's or in Abdulullah's case, that's his fourth wife. We have to subtly kind of play with it, but that's very empowering for us. And if we've had parts of our career or still have chunks of our career where we're basically, the guy in the lab coat handing somebody a folder, it's pretty cool to have 40 hours to tell a magnificent story.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so tell me about any particular parts that were particularly fun for you. Were there any parts that you laughed a lot or giggled in the studio?
Oh, well, it would be Ajeeth and I would like laugh at a lot of little things that were said in like the Mumbaiisms. And I heard there's this one line where Zainab says, "I am not Pagal." So we've been all the time. We'd be saying he could be on the phones going, "Ellora, I am not Pagal," which means crazy. So that was like little things like that we would like pick up. But with all the heavy stuff, if the intense stuff or whatever, we'd have to keep it light. So we would just joke and talk. And Ajeeth, I've lived in Mumbai. He and I've worked in Mumbai, lived there for almost a year doing a film. We would swap stories, and I would tell him like my experiences, and he would tell me what was going on with him. And but culturally, a lot of things were identifiable, so it was fun. And David too, Stinson, our recordist, wonderful fellow. He doesn't miss a beat either. I don't know, Raoul, about you, but he would catch me doing things. Excellent. Wow, his ears! I'm like, are you part bat? What's going on? It's like amazing. Like he just sounds and stuff. Or
and
he'd be like,
that made it a great technician. Makes it very easy for us because David's approach is that if we stumble, we stop and go back and just continue on. Some technicians require us to stop, reset. They recue the line on their end, and then we do it, and we kind of, so what I was impressed by with David was it made it go quite fast compared to some other processes I've done. And also it's he's very focused on the performer being at ease. And of course, anyone who does that, we're going to love. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the scenes I love from the book is when, when Abdulali goes to speak to the, British headmaster of the school for his grandson. And that's a scene I just love playing because I could imagine, I don't want to give it away, but I loved how that scene plays out and kind of in a broader sense, kind of what part of the story that represents. But, I mean,
that was inspired actually by a story I heard about my own great-great-grandfather.
Oh, amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So when people get to it, there's a scene about the great-great-grandfather being a bit of an activist.
That's great. Amazing. Yeah. And I really love, it was fun for me because, I love historical dramas. And again, as actors, we don't often get, we might get to do a Murdoch here and there, but, in our careers, we haven't spent a lot of time being included in period historical dramas shot in Canada because we didn't exist, or the perception, if you look at your Road to Avonlea's on back, we weren't there. And if we were there, no one knew it and no one's written it down and no one wants us to be there. So for us, that's my Indian side talking. Of course, my half Irish side was there, but he can't seem to get a job on TV either. So I'll take that aside. I don't get a lot of calls to be the Irish guy in Canada. No.
Well, it's their loss.
Yeah, but that aside, For me, it was really cool to imaginatively dip into what I was, that's basically the Victorian period in India. The Victorian period in Mumbai for me was a really interesting place imaginatively to be, because I'd almost have like part of it reminds me of Dickens, and another part I was going, wow. And it reminded me of my own experience as a child being in Mumbai and trying to put those worlds together. And I love the ability, I love that the book challenges us to, whether you've been to Mumbai or not, I really was drawn into the cosmopolitan nature of Mumbai in the 1880s, 1890s. We're so conditioned to imagine it as like just such a, crowded, poor place full of poor people, all this garbage that we've kind of, taken on as baggage. The slums, Slumdog Millionaire, all that stuff. And to have the story of kind of this upper middle class person in Mumbai in the 1880s and 90s, I was like, I love that part, because I was like, wow, that's a story, at least in Canadian literature and in Canadian storytelling. I'm like, this is not a world I have been brought into for all my various intersections with diasporic work. That was a new territory for me. And as a reader, it was exciting, but as a performer, I appreciated the chance to just imagine what something pre-1960 was, or pre-1947 was. It was nice to go back to a different time and imagine their lives, as your book does so beautifully.
I love when I would go to those sections of the Lily and with Raoul's parts, I would see like, the old film, and that feeling would come about, because then I would enter my world, and then, here we are today, and it would feel like, like a movie almost. And
put that out there into the universe, Ellora.
Movie!
It feels like a movie!
Hello, movie!
Deepa, read it.
Yeah, we can we can do
Well,
anything.
hey, if I mean, CanLit is definitely a place where people are looking for stories, and I have to say this story is amazing, and I really, the fact that it travels all this time, the way it travels time. I mean, it's so contemporary and it's historical at the same time. I mean, that's really a beautiful thing about the book, and would be about the movie, even if Ellora and I weren't in it. Even
oh, you'd have to be.
But
okay,
it's also a very important story. Okay, but despite that, we won't give anything away, obviously. But I also don't know how much time we have. But we gotta wrap up. It's a very important story. It's got so much to give from a woman's perspective, and it's important that it's heard. These women's voices have to be heard. They are being heard, and it's wonderful what's happening. I know we have to wrap it up. We could go on and on, couldn't we?
But thank you. Yes. I just want to thank the two of you again, because really, when I was listening to the audiobook today, I started to tear up, like, just to see that the two of you, there was so much care. I could feel the care in your voices as you were addressing, all of the scenes. So thank you. And thank you for doing this with me to celebrate the audiobook and get the word out there. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm going to do just a little wrap up, and we'll say goodbye together. So I wanted to tell the audience out there, if you enjoyed this is going to be recorded and posted on my wall. Please share it with everybody. Help us spread the word. And a reminder that the audiobook can be purchased anywhere you buy audiobooks. And if you're interested in hearing more about this story, next Thursday at 7:00, we're having a launch for the rest of the book, and I'll be the one interviewed for that. So please join us as well, and all of that information will be on my wall. So thanks for everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Likewise.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.